to tell us what exactly happened in that matter.
Very well. So what happened was that we were trying to obtain letters of administration for a woman and her daughter.
Okay.
The husband had just died, of course, and she was still mourning the husband, so she couldn't really come to court. But that's not the point. We had applied to the court to obtain letters of administration. You know, it differs by jurisdiction.
Yes.
In the jurisdiction where this happened, you could apply to court. Because I know that here in Lagos, the ones I've handled, you know, you just finish everything at the registry. So we had applied to court, and we had moved our application. And of course, the people that were on the people who were seeking the courts to grant letters of administration to were two women, you know, the wife and the first daughter, who was at the time 28 years. Yes, she was 28 years old. Okay. So you would say that, you know, she's an adult and she could very well discharge her responsibilities. But, you know, the judge, who was female also, I need to say that, because when I mention, when I talk about, you know, gender issues in court, I like to articulate if the bench was either male or female or both, so that we understand that, you know, when we speak of patriarchy, it's not just one sex or gender perpetuating it. It's okay. Both genders. So the court was female, and we had moved our application. Everything was okay. The family head, you know, was even in court. Everyone, our papers were right and all of that. And then she asked if there was a male child, you know, and we said yes, there's a male child. He's younger. He's in school. He's writing exams and all of that. And then she insisted that she wanted to see the male child. It was as if maybe the mother and the daughter were planning a coup, like trying to take over the property. Like everybody was at peace, you know. It would have been a different, you know, ball game if some people were disgruntled and they made it known to the court. Like everybody that had anything to do with the matter was at peace with it. But she insisted that, produce the male child. I want to see him.
To what end?
I wouldn't know, because it wasn't as if she wanted him to sign something or anything. She just wanted to cite him. You know, the way they say, bring your documents for citing. So she said, produce him. I want to see him. So we tried to argue on points of law, because there's no rule of probate or rule of court that says that bring a male child. But she insisted. So we had to take an adjournment and then go and bring the son down from his university in another state. You know, we had to, of course, take a long adjournment so that he could finish his exams.
And so that matter could not proceed until
he couldn't. And then
was produced.
Bring him down.
Well, that is quite sad, because you would think that the people who are supposed to advocate for change, you know, who are supposed to be at the forefront of the fight against discrimination, you know, the courts still have this attitude. So one could say that the problem is deeply rooted in our society, in our culture. So that would bring me to my next question. What do you think can be done to change that culture?
A lot. But basically, two things. I think that we have two weapons, two veritable weapons. One is education, and the other will be, you know, employing the instrumentality of the law.
Okay.
So if you meet a roadblock or a hurdle, you know, that's gender bias based, go to the law. And when you've got your decision, or when you've got your judgment, you spread it. Let people know that, this is what happened. And then one mistake that people keep making is that I was interviewing a lady for my blog series. Okay. At some point, you know, she just said that, she did not feel that she had, how would I call it? You know, the authority, so to speak, to actually continue the interview, because she has never been a victim of, you know, gender inequality. Okay. So she doesn't feel like she has a mouth in the matter. That's wrong. And then there are those who are denying it. So I'd say that we have to keep talking about these things. Okay. You know, we have to keep talking about it, because it's not until it happens to you. You know, it's like saying that you don't want to talk about armed robbery because you've never been robbed. Okay. When you're going to be robbed, nobody's going to write you a letter that we're coming to your house. True. But when someone is robbed and you talk about it, it's like you're lending your voice. So I like to say that, you know, some of these things, when we talk about them, they're like drops and drops and drops, and they make a mighty ocean. at the end of the day, we'll get what we want.
All right, we'll be taking a short break soon. Thank you very much. And I'd like you to answer just one more question before we go on our break. You talked about, experiencing it firsthand, not being a requirement for you to be an advocate or an activist. But I would just like to ask, for the sake of conversation, if you have personally suffered, any discrimination based on your gender.
My gender. I think we all have.
Okay.
Although in varying measures,
degrees and proportions.
And sometimes we don't even know that what we are going through is gender discrimination.
Okay, so give us an example.
Okay, that I have gone through. I
Yes.
can remember one recently. I think it's even mild, in the sense that I needed to get an equipment.
Okay.
For business purposes, and I didn't have. I was okay. I had some monies outside from people I had rendered services to. So before they paid, I spoke to someone, a male. I said, okay, meet me halfway. Just give me something. I knew that he had the capability to do so, and he was in that position. It wasn't like maybe I went to a stranger or went to somebody that he was in the right position to help me. So I said, meet me halfway, and let me get this thing. People owe me money; they'll pay me. And then it kept delaying, dilly-dallying, and then I went ahead. Luckily, the people that were owing money, they paid. I got the equipment. So the next time I saw him, I was telling him that I got this thing. He was shocked, like he was surprised, and was looking at me like, really? You got it? I was like, yes, I was talking to you. You didn't answer me. I got it. And then he made a statement. He said, you're the one that wants to be independent now. I think that's gender. It's very mild, but it's gender inequality. And coming from someone that had spoken to about this issue very, very well, someone that seemed to understand, the nuances of gender inequality.
So you don't think he would have made that statement if he were talking to a guy?
You
don't have any problem with the man being independent?
Exactly. You won't have a problem with a man being, it would have been, oh, wow, you're like very hardworking, you're a go-getter, like you really did it. But for me, because I'm a lady and I didn't wait for you, you're saying that, oh, you're the one that wants to be independent. So I think that's the most recent. There are other examples, but for time, let me just stop at that.
I imagine you always make it a point to bring people to order anytime. Did you give him a piece of your mind?
I did not. Interestingly.
Well, we're talking about making sure that you continue carrying on the conversation, and checkmating it at every point that you find it. So I guess there's a lesson in there for all of us.
Yes, there is.
To take away.
There is.
All right. Thank you very much. I will go on a short break right now, and when we come back, we'll have the second part of our segment. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
How many questions do you have?
You said?
How many questions do you have?
1, 2, 4.
I will always pray for you. I go always.
Interesting timing. I actually gave you first 5 minutes way before 5 minutes because I saw that you guys were taking a bit. So you have an additional 1 minute in the next segment.
The first 5 minutes. You said the first 5 minutes.
I gave you first 5 minutes notice until 7 minutes because I saw that you were taking long on the first question.
Oh.
So I hope to manage your time. So you have an extra 1 minute in the next segment. So I'm giving you 15 minutes to do it. So you can ask your 4 questions within that. That would help you manage time by giving you notices. So don't be in a hurry. Just take your time. But once you see the 5 minutes to go, you will start running.
Okay, sure.
So we're going back live in 8 seconds,
Okay.
5 seconds. Hosanna. Okay. 5, go.
All right, welcome back to our segment. Thank you for your time again, Mojolaoluwa.
Thank you.
So carrying on our conversation, from the earlier part, there's a question I would like to ask you. A lot of the time, people think that this the battle for equality and equity generally is for women alone. What is your perspective? Do you think that the gender battle is for women only, Or is there another dimension to it,
No, I think it's for everyone, because everyone, we are all reaping the dividends, in quotes,
of the patriarchy,
of gender inequality, of patriarchy.
Okay.
So it's a battle for everyone, male or female, because in some way, whether you're a male or a female, you're perpetrating this, and in some way, you're also a victim. So it's the onus lies on everyone to address this issue, because if we have an equitable society, we will all benefit from it. So sometimes we can see from what is what I'll call our reality, that women are more outspoken. And I'll just say that it follows, because when you wear the shoe, you know where it pinches the most.
Okay.
So for women, it might come more naturally, because they are the direct victims of gender inequality. But men need to lend their voice, because patriarchy is rooted in the male gender. They've been the one perpetrating patriarchy, so much so that some females now they perpetrate patriarchy too, as a natural order, like they don't see anything wrong in it. So whether you're a male or female, it's a collective call. We can't put it on a sex, because not a sex is a victim, not one sex is a perpetrator. We are all perpetrators and victims of patriarchy. And I'd like to refer you to that example I gave of the young man that said to me that I like to be independent. I told you that this was someone that understood, in my opinion, understood the nuances of gender inequality. This is someone that has spoken against gender inequality himself. So you'd see that this thing is somewhat ingrained in us.
Okay.
So it's something that we need to continually check ourselves. And you say, no, we don't do this. No, we won't do this. So it's a collective call, male or female. All
right. Well, that is true. My next question would be then, how can, men and male members of the society, and, more specifically the legal profession, since, that is our space, how can men assist in narrowing the gender gap? I mean, apart from obvious champions and heroes like myself hosting this show. So how do you think men can contribute to making this situation better?
Okay, I wouldn't like you to use the word assist. They're not assisting.
Okay.
They're not doing a favor by speaking against gender inequality. It's like a responsibility. It's a duty, not an assistance.
So how can they play their part?
Yes, I'd like to say that, in the legal profession, we have it better than other professions, Okay, it's not really that outspoken, If, for example, you put yourself forward if I put myself forward as a female lawyer, people are most likely going to want to see my ability. They want to see my delivery. They're not questioning it. It's different when a female doctor puts herself out. People are looking at her, maybe she's a nurse. The male ones are the real doctors, So maybe I think we have it better. But how we can, even make it even, how we can improve is, for instance, in the judiciary, when arriving at decisions, the male members of the bench must ensure that, they divest themselves of any ingrained bias when arriving at their decisions.
How does one do that?
How you do that is by continuously checking yourself.
Okay.
You have to continue to check yourself. I was speaking to my colleague the other day, and he said that someone had been rude to him. So the person was from another tribe.
Okay.
So I told him, I said, was this person really rude to you? Or was this person, was it the cultural flavor, the tribal flavor of their conversation that made it seem rude, that made them seem rude? I always look at that. Like if you're Yoruba, for instance, and I'm Igbo, and you're talking to me, if I find what you're saying offensive, I look at it like, am I judging you based on my own culture? That, you shouldn't talk to me that way. We don't talk like that in Igbo land. Or are you really rude in the objective sense? So I think that's a way that people on the bench, the male members of the bench, can, contribute their quota. When arriving at decisions, they must approach it objectively. Look at it. Is this the decision for male or female? Not, am I deciding like this because the person in question is a female, or maybe the lawyer representing is a female?
Okay, quick a digression of sorts. I've always been curious, and I don't know if you have an opinion on this. To what extent do you think that, tribe and indigenous culture now, maybe Igbos are this way or Yorubas are this way. Do you think that any tribe, the culture of a particular tribe contributes more to that equality, or do you think it evolved from tribalistic tendencies?
Oh, of course, certainly.
So which tribe are you going to point the finger at and put in?
No, I think we all have our shortcomings when it comes to gender inequality. You would avert your mind to Ukeja and Ukeje.
Okay.
That case that was decided in favor of female children, being allowed to administer their father's property and inherit. You would note that that's the Eastern tribe. The people in the case, they're from the Eastern tribe, and there were a lot of uproar. There was a lot of uproar. If you read the news at the time when the decision was made, even the traditional chiefs, paramount rulers, and all of that, they had a lot to say, and many of them said that, this decision is a disruption to our culture, which shows you that in their own culture, they are already prejudiced against the female gender. So Yoruba culture, we have our own. Women can inherit in Yoruba culture, but we also have our own, gender inequality.
Can you give us an example? Because you're Yoruba. If you don't give us an example, I feel like I'm being biased.
Okay. Yoruba, I think that in my culture, women are supposed to be subdued. I know a lot of people say it's submission.
Now, is that traditional or religious?
It is traditional. I'm talking about subdued, not in the marital sense. Okay. Like you're supposed to be subdued as a proper Yoruba.
You don't talk too
girl.
much. Don't let your voice be heard.
You don't look your elders in the face. You don't raise your voice. You don't assert yourself. You just bend.
And you feel there are more allowances made for
the male. I think that male children are just allowed to just do their thing. I like the way a friend put it. The male children, they're allowed to take the world by the storm. Do whatever they want to do.
What would your pragmatic approach be to tackling this at the traditional level, at the cultural level? Because on the one hand, it is our culture, we are supposed to be proud of it, but then there is a new crop of advocates, of people who are more exposed, who are more aware of societal issues. And it seems as if, achieving gender equality and real balance is equal to doing away with your culture. So what's your take? Do you think it's one or the other, or do you think there's a sweet spot somewhere in between, where both can coexist?
I'd like to reference Bethel Simeon. He said something once. He said, morality is the name that we give to conventions that do no wrong. So when you say something is a culture, we have to be sure that, at every point in time, it's not harming us. If something is harming us, we can change it. What's culture? Social studies definition, our way of life, the sum total of a people's way of life. Yeah, that's what I was taught in social studies. I believe it's a general definition. So if something is our way of life, can't we change the way we are living if it's not benefiting us?
Do you think this change will come as a natural result of, maybe we'll just evolve out of it? Or do you think there needs to be a violent affront on the status quo?
A violent affront will do no one any good.
Okay.
Like the case in, when courts give their decision, there's something about enforcement as well. So, for example, the case in Ukeja and Ukeje, you can't just charge into the community with a court judgment and say, I have the judgment. I have the judgment. No, it takes time, but we need to start from somewhere. For example, that judgment is there, it's a binding precedence. So when other people have similar matters, they can rely on the judgment. We are expanding the frontiers of our law. And pretty soon, people begin to understand that things are changing. So it's gradual, but we need to talk about it, and we need to go to court about it.
Okay, so what would the tangible benefits of achieving true gender, equality be for our society? Just tell us, like, if we had a truly balanced society, this wouldn't be happening, or this would be the case. One or two things that you believe would be much better.
I think the most important benefit for me is that women will be able to, channel all this energy that we're putting into gender equality fight into more productive use. Look at Malala Yousafzai. Let's say that, she did not have to fight to get an education and fight for girls in her community to get an education. Maybe she could have channeled that energy into something better. Maybe she could have discovered the coronavirus cure.
So if you weren't on this show, what do you think you would be doing?
Or if I weren't on this show, I'll probably be in my office, preparing a legal document that will benefit somebody's life.
Okay, so it's better use of our resources generally as a society.
Yes.
And of course, progress would be inevitable.
Another thing that gender inequality does is that it shuts the door against you. So people don't really get to know what you can or cannot do, because you're already precluded by virtue of your gender. So if we were able to get a gender equitable society, the field will be balanced. So it will be like everyone come and do what you can.
Final question. This is a bid to look on the bright side. Apart from, Supreme Court pronouncements to that effect, Mojeku, KJ, and the likes, what other progressive steps? It could be in the legal space, it could be outside of the legal space, could be policy, it could be trends in society, it could be anything that you have noticed, that gives you hope that maybe there truly is a future where we'll be past, discussing these issues and constantly expending resources and time, advocating for the same thing. So what steps do you think, what progress have we made towards combating this gender imbalance?
Okay, I think that in the area of laws, we've made a tremendous progress. I'd like to talk about the VAP Act. That's the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, a law actually. It was enacted in 2015, and I know that about 10 states of the Federation have their own VAP Act. They've adopted it, so to speak. So because that act, expanded, a lot of things as regards the criminal code, talked about rape, which is now for both sexes. It talked about deprivation for women, economic deprivation, which is a very important factor in gender inequality, because a lot of gender biases that women are facing, they can be traced back to economic disempowerment, if I can call it that. So it also talks about, crimes like, it criminalizes things like female genital mutilation and all of that. That's it. And then we have there's a bill before the House. It's a gender bill. It's but I'm aware that the members of the House are having a problem passing that bill because of the age of consent issue.
Okay, so apart
so
from
those
laws,
are legal reforms
yes,
that have been done.
And
then there are movements too.
Okay.
There are social media movements, that I know that social media is like a leveler.
Yes.
So that physically it's gender inequality is more pronounced physically, but when you come to social media, you can say anything, you can be anything, whether you're a male or a female. So I think social media has given a voice to a lot of women. A lot of men are doing great things. There are more women in STEM,
yes,
and where more women are starting. They are having their own startups, tech startups and all of that. There are a number of notable Nigerian women that have started their own companies, in finance and different other spaces.
That's really beautiful. And I think also another thing that personally I have seen is there's less tolerance for, blatant acts of discrimination, against women in recent times. Anytime anything related to, female issues comes up, the general, I would say, spirit of the people right now, I think it's in the right direction.
Yes,
exactly.
So
thank you very much for your time. It's been such a pleasure discussing with you. Thank you for lending your voice.
Me.
Thank you very much to our producer. So again, this is Breakfast with Milo on Lex Radio. We look forward to discussing with you some other time, hopefully, and catch you guys next week, same time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.